Hi, everybody. My name is David Bray. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, David. And my sobriety date is January 2nd, 1981, and for that period of time, I'm very grateful. I told... I'll start again. A lot of people alluded to the fact that we were at a funeral this morning, and two members of the fellowship from Norman had to bury their 2-year-old daughter, and a week ago, right now, their daughter got ill, and it just seemed like it was a virus, and today they buried her, to watch what happened was people in the fellowship from the surrounding areas and the communities they rushed to this couple's side. And, it's a situation where, you can't even imagine. I certainly couldn't imagine the pain that two parents would have to bury their 2-year-old daughter. I can't imagine pain like that. Unless you've experienced it, you can't imagine it. And yet, although we knew we couldn't say anything to make the pain go away, what we tried to do was just tell them that and show them that we care. And I don't believe that of all the people that were at that function this morning, you saw literally sincere grief, tears of sadness, and really one of the again, they made mention to the preacher that was up there, and he just simply said, if we could take their pain away, we would. If there's anything we could do to take part of that or most of that pain away, we would have done it. But we can't. So what we try is just to let them know that, we were there and that we cared about them. And I know that we were, the people of Alcoholics Anonymous were sincere about their grief and about their care for those two people. And everybody walked out of there in shock. Everybody walked out of there and just, what else can you do? And we get in the car, and we know we were coming here, and now what we're doing is we're celebrating the fact that Alcoholics Anonymous and the power that lies within these rooms and within these 12 steps and in these traditions, we have an opportunity to celebrate the fact that Alcoholics Anonymous has allowed one of our members to stay sober for 15 years. And within that period of time, if his story is anything like my story, and since I've heard most of it, he's a work in progress. Since I've heard most of his story, I know that a lot of our stories are very similar. See, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, the damage I had done to my parents, the damage I had done to my 2 brothers, the damage I had done to that family, I thought was wasn't repairable. Because I had been so selfish in my disease of alcoholism, I didn't think that there was enough time for me to ever repair anything. So when I got to you, I had almost no emotion. What I would have, if we would have rewound the tape 21 years ago and I would have had to gone to that service today, I would have felt nothing. I could have cared less. I might have thought something like, well, good, because now you're in as much pain as I am in. And yet today, we're all bawling because we hurt so badly for 2 people that we care about. And then we get in the car and we're driving and we begin to realize that now we're going to be celebrating the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous in the life of one of our members. And we actually get to celebrate the fact that because of this program and because of principles and because of our steps, he has taken action to try to repair the damage done to the family. And when we got to his home, his family was there, and there was love, and there was enjoyment, and there was all the things that go along with being sober, being an active member of a home group, and what happens if you work steps and try to apply principle. And we're genuinely happy. We're generally elated for that prospect. We care so much about Mike and we care about Karen that we're happy in the fact that sobriety is in their home. And I know one thing, they ran home and hugged those 2 daughters. They ran home and hugged those 2 babies. And well, one's in Maine, so they're going to hug her when to get back, but that's what we do. And we're sincerely happy about what we're doing tonight. We can go from the depths of despair to elation in one, and we're equally sincere in both things. We're equally sincere in both things, and we have the capability of doing both things. And I believe what that is for me, because I was not capable of that when I got to you. And Bill's story talks about God at work in the human heart. See, my heart when I got here was stone. About the only thing I had left was hatred and terrible self-loathing. I would wake up every morning and I would look at myself in the mirror and I think, what a piece of crap. And I would have to drink to get up for the day. And then I would have to get so intoxicated so I could go to sleep so I could stop the nightmares. And it was just, that's the way I lived day in and day out. So that's our day. I mean, what a typical day, Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was talking to my mom and my dad over the last couple of days, and we're going to be meeting each other in a couple of weeks up in Seattle, and Susan and I, we're pretty busy, and my mom always said, why don't you guys slow down? I can't imagine slowing down. I can't imagine. She goes, you're going to have to start saying no. It's like, you don't know my sponsor. I can't even fathom calling my sponsor up and going and saying, I'm going to say no. No, you're not. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous and I heard people share their experience, strength, and hope from behind a podium, I didn't realize what I was looking at was one of maybe the greatest privileges somebody is allowed to have in our fellowship, is to be able to stand behind a podium of Alcoholics Anonymous and talk about what's occurred in their life. I heard a lot of stories. I heard a lot of alcoholics tell their life history from behind a podium of Alcoholics Anonymous, and a lot of times it was funny, and a lot of times it was sad, and a lot of times, and there were a few times where I actually said to that speaker in my mind, "Boy, you make sense. I understand that." And the one thing that happens in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous is that what we'll try to do, or what'll happen is that sober members of AA, people who have been here for a while, are trying to reach out to people that maybe aren't sober for a while, or are just finding out, or trying to find out, are they one of us? Am I an alcoholic? When I got here, I honestly didn't know. Within a very short period of time, I started getting to understand that probably I was. And then in a very little bit time after that, I knew I was. I had heard enough about the disease of alcoholism, and they told me specifically what the medical part of the disease was, how I thought, and they told that through their own experience in our literature. And I could understand that I was one of you. But I'll tell you something, I never one time in my early years did I ever want to show up here. I don't believe there's a single person who's ever in their life woke up one day and go, you know what, when I grow up, God, I hope I get to AA. Go down to your high school counselor. What do you want to be when you grow up? You know what, I want to be a bad drunk. I'll just barely make it to AA. And yet, from that moment, those high school days, that's exactly what I did, man. I set out on a course of destruction that I didn't even know I was in. But I was always looking for an answer, and my sponsor has a great quote. I was looking for an answer, and I didn't know what the question was. But I drank some alcohol one day. And something happens to me because although I didn't know I was an alcoholic, something happened to me when I drank alcohol that I now know does not happen to 90% of the population. Because 90% of the population aren't alcoholics. But I am. And when I poured alcohol into my system, something happened to me that doesn't happen to them. All the world changed. I have a reaction to alcohol. When I pour alcohol into my system, my perception of you and this big bad world changes. And I didn't know it. Growing up, I was part of my father was a decent athlete, and he played professional baseball in the Chicago Cubs minor league system, and by the age of 20, he blew his arm out. But as we grew up, sports was always a part of our family. And my oldest brother was a good athlete, and he tried baseball. He did pretty good golfer. Middle brother was the best athlete in the family. He was a letterman in high school in football, baseball, and basketball. And then there was me. And one of the traits I would hear AA is, we always, we just feel like we're a little bit different. And man, I felt that right from the beginning. All right, I was short and fat, and man, gravity was challenged. I'd come right back down. And then, A to B, man, there was not a lot. There was not a great, I didn't break any records getting from A to B. It didn't matter how far from B A was, but man, I didn't get there very fast. And man, there was something different about me. I was good at sports that if you threw something and you had to hit it with something, I was good at hitting the baseball. I hit some of the longest singles and doubles in Little League history. I just remember seeing the awe and all the mom, go Dave, go. You hear things as you're running down, God, that kid's fat, he's just running. And then, so sports was always a part of our deal. And I took up football, and, I found out that I'm bad at football because I got a problem. I have no courage, and I don't want to get hit. That's, that's part of football, and that's not a part that, when the coach really doesn't appreciate when the guy's running and you just kind of go like that and let him run by. They kind of frown upon that. He told me one day at the end of the year at practice, he goes, Bray, for a guy like you who shows up to football practice every day, you're the worst football player I've ever seen in my life. And he was right, man. I stink. And so I took up golf. And, man, I hit Nirvana. I found out very quickly that, man, if I could hit a golf ball, I could hit it straight, and I could hit it where I aimed it. And I found that if I applied some things that I learned, that I became good at golf very quickly. And it was a great sport for a guy like me. You hit the ball, and you don't have to run after it. There's no jumping unless you want to. And then later on, what I found out was what was really great is you could, once you got away from the clubhouse where the coaches stood, because they never went out after you. They stayed at the first hole, and then as soon as you left, they went in and drank beer. But after you get on about the second or third hole, you hit the ball and you light up a cigarette and you walk after it, man. And that, I was home. And by the time I was a junior in high school, I was playing to about a 2 or 3 handicap, and things were looking good, and had some talent, but then I started drinking. And right from the beginning, I knew that the reaction I had to alcohol was different. I knew when I drank alcohol, things happened. And the very first time I drank, I went into a blackout and I passed out. That was my very first attempt at drinking, and it was unsuccessful. And I don't believe, unless it was chemically induced, I had any success at drinking. I had to have certain combinations, and I could drink successfully. But what I found out is that when I drank, the pain of the world went away. One of the things that I know is that I'm an alcoholic because I'm not an alcoholic because I drink and get drunk. Anybody who drinks enough alcohol will get drunk. Anybody. Anybody who drinks enough alcohol might pass out. That doesn't make me an alcoholic. People who drink enough alcohol might do stupid things and say stupid things. That doesn't make me an alcoholic. What I found out was I have a reaction to alcohol that non-alcoholics will never have. When I drink alcohol, I develop what our book calls the phenomenon of craving. I have to drink more alcohol. I start to drink, and I have this craving for alcohol that non-alcoholics will never understand. And man, I need to drink. And I didn't become that type of alcoholic right away. It took a period of time. But by the time I was finished, when I drank, only 1 or 2 or 3 things happened. I black out, I pass out, or I run out. That's it. I start to drink, and the book says that I lose control. That's one of the things that makes me an alcoholic. Our book uses a line that says, we alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. And that's me. When I drink, I lose control. I do not have the ability to guarantee my actions once I begin to drink. That's what makes me an alcoholic. Then on top of that, you turn this thing into the phenomenon of craving, and my body starts craving alcohol. Whether I'm drinking it or not drinking it, my body craves alcohol. And the book talks about that I will have that craving to such a... The book says I'm not drinking to escape. I'm drinking to overcome a craving that is beyond my mental control. I literally had reasons not to drink, and I couldn't stop. I had plenty of opportunity to do things, and if I just stopped drinking, I would have made something of myself. You know, I had probably the worst word in the English language that people would describe it. Had a lot of potential. What a curse. You know, God, he's got a lot of potential. You know, but he drinks bad. You know, doesn't run very fast either. You know, I could never be a thief because you try to steal something, you get caught. You know, the idea that, you know, those are my options when I begin to drink, and I knew it right from an early age. I knew I had trouble. I knew I had problems, but our book talks about that I'm going to use every form of experimentation and self-deception to try to prove myself that I don't have these problems. And I lived by that credo. I tried different experiments. I deceived myself. What a great word. You know, I don't read the word denial in the big book. I read words like the illusion that I'm like another person, normal people. The delusion. I have the delusion that I'm like normal men. I try to kid myself that it isn't that bad. Or here's my favorite one that I use all the time. If I really wanted to stop, I could. Or, this is the goldie. I'm not hurting anybody but myself. That was my old threadbare. Oh, I'm not hurting anybody but myself. You know, except if you look at the destruction I'm causing in my family, they would certainly have had a different opinion. I was 20 years sober, and this was about a year and a half ago, and I went to see my mom and my dad, and you know, I hadn't stolen from them in 20 years. I hadn't vomited on their carpet in 20 years. You know, I haven't broken any of their furniture or ripped them off or burned holes in their stuff or had hordes of indecent people coming in and out of their place, you know. And yet we started talking, and it was just like almost an instant. 20 years from that type of my lifestyle, and in 20 years, memories of my destruction came out of their mouths, just like boom, boom, boom. Do you remember when? Boom. Do you remember when? Boom. If I think I didn't hurt them, what a fool. That pain of theirs is still in there. I caused so much pain in my parents' lives, and I had that absolute audacity to say I'm not hurting anybody but myself. You know, I remember, so I have three options. I drink, run out, pass out, black out. You know, I remember one time I ran out, but I had to drink. Now you're willing to do just about anything. I'm sitting in a bar and I'm with people and I have no more money, and obviously I'd probably mooched off these people long enough, and they're getting a little tired paying for my way. I asked the bartender. Somebody had spilled a drink on the bar, and he wiped it up with this cloth. I asked him to squeeze it out into a glass. But I didn't realize what else he'd been wiping up. I need a drink. See, I need a drink. I don't know why I have to drink. I just have to drink. And I'll do whatever it takes to get the drink. You know, you might have to vomit right after that, but let me have it. Tastes like a rag. I know one time that I graduated from high school, really don't know how, went to a junior college, still was playing golf. My freshman year in my junior college, my golf team won the Illinois State Championship, and I was part of that championship squad. And we got flown to play in the National Junior College Golf Tournament. And there were scouts out there for some of the big schools. And really there was an opportunity. It was an opportunity to show something. And by this time my skills had started to erode. And I made the cut as an individualist. Our team didn't make the cut, but I made the cut as an individualist. So I had something going. but I got drunk on that second night. And I played very bad the third day of the tournaments, 4 days. I got so drunk the third night that I was running to the tee with a hangover trying to put my golf shoe as they were calling my name to hit the ball. I was so hungover, I played in places where I had to literally hit the ball into the woods so I could go vomit. Hit the ball back out. You don't want to just barf on the fairway. They don't, Hope the woods are in that next hole. I'm feeling a little queasy. So I'm starting to give away things that are good and decent in my life. I'm starting to sacrifice things that I should be focusing my attention to. The thing that I know is what I'm doing is wrong. I know what I'm doing is wrong, and I can't stop. I don't know how to stop doing what I'm doing. I wish I could. I'll tell you, that's when the self-respect starts flying out the window. Because the way I was raised, my parents instilled in me good values. My mother and my father instilled in me the difference between right and wrong, the work ethic, all the things that I should have understood, but I'm an alcoholic. And I have to start selling them out one by one because I have to drink a certain way. And when you have to drink a certain way, you have to live a certain lifestyle. And when you're not independently, well, even if you don't have a job, you got to start doing stuff to get the type of alcohol that you want to drink. And those are the things that I started to do. So I graduated from this junior college, and for the first time in my life, I went to a 4-year college. It was in DeKalb, Illinois. I grew up outside the city of Chicago, and northern Illinois is about 45 miles, kind of northwest of Chicago, and that's where I went to school. And for the first time in my life, I'm on my own. And from almost the day that I got to that college campus to the day I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I never drew another sober breath. I really enjoyed the fact that I was on my own, and I took full advantage of it. On a college campus, one of the great party times, of course, when you're on your own, if you're an alcoholic, you can figure out a reason to drink. But Halloween is one of those extraordinary times on a college campus, and you can just dress up and just act goofy, and you just, as an alcoholic, that's great because as everybody else is acting goofy, you just kind of blend in. You don't stick out like a sore thumb. And so this bunch that I was running with, there was a movie that came out in 1980 called The Warriors, and it was a movie about gangs, and so our bright idea is we were going to dress up as one of these gangs, and we picked one of the gangs out of the movie called the Baseball Furies. And so you had baseball uniforms, and you painted your face red and white and cap, and needed a baseball bat, and I didn't have one. So I went into my closet about that, and it had the big 4-foot oak pole. So I grabbed that. That's my baseball bat. Went to the party. See, by this time, though, I'm a blackout drinker. There's enough, and I'm going to a kegger. So running out is out. I'm not gonna run out tonight. That's a good thought. All right. But I don't know, is it going to be pass out or blackout? And usually pass out was okay because, if you're laying in a heap over there, you're not doing too much damage. People, they might pee on you, or kick you as you walk, but you're not doing a heck of a lot of damage, But if I black out, see, and I've already started experiencing all that. And so I go to this party and I start to drink and I black out. And the story that's told to me the next morning is this. Is at about 3 o'clock in the morning, a group of people saw me walking down the streets of DeKalb in the direction, really not going to where my apartment was, so they grabbed me, and I guess I went with them, and they took me home. And I walk into one of the other apartments in this building that I live in, and some of the guys that we hang out with, what they told me was I walked in, and I had about this much of my closet pole left, and I go, ooh, I was hurting people. And see, I don't remember anything. I don't remember anybody. I don't remember any of that night. I don't remember if I started knocking heads with my closet pole. And that next morning when they told me that story, it got my attention. It scared me. Because I had moments of violence. If I'm in the right frame of mind, I can act out in a violent manner, and I've certainly done that before. And so I don't know what occurred. And so I'm looking at all this mess, and I start looking in newspapers, and the college campus usually have their newspapers, and usually there's a little section in there about all the crime beat. It tells you all the nefarious actions of all the ghouls and goons out there. And I start looking, and I don't find any information about somebody dressed up in a baseball uniform knocking heads with a closet pole. And so I did what I've done with every stupid action in my life up to that point. I dismiss it. I push it to the side. It's not that. I started convincing, one more time, self-deception. I start telling myself, it's not that big a deal, Dave. Don't worry about it. Everybody does that. Don't worry, Dave. It's okay. And so I just go on. Late November. Now, I'm supposed to be getting education. I don't know how many times I've gone to class. That's a bad sign, when you're, But for whatever reason, I don't know, it was late November, and I'm living in this apartment. And, I don't know if these guys that I'm living with are alcoholic, but because our book says we don't like to pronounce anybody alcoholic. It's not that we don't do it. It's just we don't like to. And I don't know if the guys I was living with were alcoholic. I know one thing. We had an alcoholic-looking, feeling, smelling apartment. Our apartment was alcoholic. I promise you. If you walked into our kitchen, every plate, cup, glass, piece of silverware was scattered about. There was not a clean cup, glass, anything. All right? The sink usually had that old mucky water floating in it, old Cheerio things floating to the top, Bugs, roaches everywhere. That was the kitchen. We ate out a lot. And there were paper products, and they all interchanged. Coffee filters, toilet paper, paper towel. They could serve any one of any of those. Whatever was handy, you used. The carpet kind of had that glaze, crunch, sticky, alcoholic feel to it. Because, man, everything, we don't clean up. I mean, we hadn't touched the vacuum. I don't even know if there was one, but we certainly never used it. And it kind of had that gooey, spongy crunch thing to it, and it was a nice pad. One morning in late November, because I don't know, the semester was coming to a close, so it had to have been late November. I came to in that carpet. My face was and I had an intuitive thought. I have an art test. I don't know why that thought came to mind, but I had to go take a test. I don't know what I'm going to be tested on, but I got to go. So I looked out the window, and the window didn't have drapes. There were no drapes. You threw a sheet or a blanket over the window to keep the sun out. And so I looked out the drape or the blanket or the sheet, whatever was on it. The sun was shining. So I put on my uniform of the day, which was I'd cut off the sleeves of all my T-shirts. And this one, so I had the sleeveless T-shirt, and this one proudly proclaimed on my chest, "Free me." It had a big fist with the finger on the back. I put on my shorts, and I put on my thongs, and I grabbed my number 2 pencil, and I walked to class. And the class, the building, where the buildings were from our apartment, was a pretty good walk, probably about a mile or so. And I walked to class, and I got to the building where I had to take the test, and I go in, and it's the class where I'm at. It's kind of the auditorium-style seating, so you have to kind of look up and find a seat. And as I looked up, I look out into the rest of my classmates, and there was something noticeably different about all of you as compared to me. Every single one of you were in heavy winter clothing. I'm not talking about like windbreaker stuff. I'm talking the heavy stuff. I'm talking the big burly coats and the scarves and the mittens and those ski masks where just the eyes show. And as I'm walking up the aisle to find a seat, I heard one guy say, "Geez, what does that guy know that we don't?" And because it's late November in northern Illinois. It's frickin' cold outside. And I didn't realize, but what was told to me was the wind chill factor was about 1. And it was colder going home than it was going to class. You start noticing those looks as you scurry about in your thongs. But you see, when I came to that morning and I looked out the window, and I looked out and saw the sun shining, what was left of my mind at that point calculated this thought: sun, warm, free me. Number 2 pencil. And that's pretty much how I showed up to you in Alcoholics Anonymous, ready to rewrite your big book. And so I go home after the finals. During that last couple of weeks of my active drinking, I was at the mailbox every day, gonna head that report card off at the pass. That wasn't gonna be one that the parents saw, even though they were paying for it. So after Christmas, and that was kind of a bad Christmas. I was the last kid at the house, so my 2 brothers were already out of the house, and I'm the last one, and we're not talking. Our dinners, the dinners really consisted of very ugly looks at each other, no talking, and really just almost disdain. And so after the holidays, it was right between Christmas and New Year's, my parents got invited out to one of those between the holiday parties, and so they went, and so I thought, it would be a perfect time. I'll invite a couple of close friends, have a Hallmark moment. One of those times where you invite 2 or 3 people over, and about 98 show up. And I black out, and I pass out. And now my parents' home is left laid waste by this horde. And my mother is one of those people that knows exactly where, like, the crease in the bedspread is. You're a lot like my mother. By the way, she picked up your socks. I mean, she knew where creases in bedspreads were. And if the crease was like a micron off, somebody been sleeping in this bed. Well, now there's no way to get the house back in shape. Spray down a little carpet cleaner. You're vacuuming it up. She can see because you got the foamy stuff still on the vacuum cleaner. As you're rushing through the house to try to get those stains up. I hope I never forget. I hope that one of the things that keeps me sober, but I hope I never forget the look the next day. See, because everything that could have been stolen was stolen. Whoever they were went up into my parents' bedroom, and they had in their closet, they had their lockbox with all the important papers, the house deeds and the family and the stuff. And about 2 days later, my mother found that lockbox beaten to within an inch of its life, jammed behind the basement furnace. Now, they didn't get into the lockbox, which is amazing because the lockbox wasn't locked. I hung out with some real bright people. The book talks about that, we seek out lower companionship hoping to find, understanding and approval. What I fail to realize is those people were seeking me out. The best way I can describe myself is I was a loser. And one drunken stupid, my father asked me to spell the word loser. L-O. Started to use phonics. Loser. You. The next morning, my father looked at me and he looked at me with such hatred and disdain and disgust that I hope I never forget that. And he said to me, the last words he said to me before I came to AA was, he looked me in the eye and he said, Dave, with a son like you, I don't need any enemies. And he had the right to say that to me. I certainly wasn't acting like a son. I certainly wasn't acting like a member of that family. I was acting like an animal. I was acting like the selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, self-deluded, self-delusionary person that I had become. And everything that I was doing, I was volunteering for. Nobody forced me. Nobody ever tied me down and poured alcohol down my throat. I, on my own, came up with every lie and every thought and every bad action on my own. And I was reaping my own reward. And for whatever reason that night, and I don't know what it was, he was through. You're out. I can't stand looking at you. And then for whatever reason, he said, what are you going to do? And the words that came out of my mouth on the second day of January of 1981, I had never said before in my life. Because the way that I was raised was, if you're a man, you can tackle anything. If you work hard enough, you can do anything. If you're a man, for Pete's sake, act like it. And I knew that somewhere along the line I hadn't gotten some of that, because man, I was trying and I couldn't come up with whatever that thing was. I didn't have the power. I didn't realize I was an alcoholic, and I was fighting something that was beyond that. I thought I was weak. I thought I was that loser. I thought that I was morally not capable of doing the things that you were asking me to do, and therefore I was just going to drink myself to death. But for whatever reason on that day, I said something I'd never said before. And I said, if I'm going to stop drinking, I'm going to need help. And I had never used those words all together in one sentence ever before. And I haven't had a drink of alcohol from that day to this day. Now, that one sentence isn't what keeps me sober. It's what got me to you. That's it. I surrendered. It's what got me to this place. There's an awful lot of people that come to AA, and they've had the surrender that I've had. But most alcoholics don't stay here. Most alcoholics will leave. It's been said all night. Alcoholics Anonymous demands only one thing: an entire psychic change. That's what AA demands. If I'm going to recreate a life, if I'm going to have the things that I see that you people have here, I'm going to have an entire psychic change. I didn't know what that was. It sounds good. I'm about to call up Miss Cleo and find out what the hell you're talking about. But what our book talks about is something has to happen. My sponsor makes it real simple for me. He said there's a line, in alcoholism, there's a line that's crossed from becoming the normal drinker, across the line into alcoholic drinking. A line is crossed. And once you're an alcoholic, you're never anything else. You'll always be an alcoholic from that day forward. Book says you cannot make a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. It'll never happen. My sponsor talks about there's a line in AA that has to be crossed. And most people never cross it. And it's from going from being a taker to being a giver. And this afternoon, at that funeral this morning, I saw a church full of givers. They wanted nothing to do but take the pain away from those two parents. They couldn't do it, but they wanted to. I saw a room full of givers in that church this morning. And I watch in my group, and I watch in your group. My sponsor has taught me to be observant in AA, because the people who are givers, and I'll tell you, when I'm brand new, I don't even know how to give. All I have to do is just say 2 words. Yes, sir. And I can become a giver. Almost, and not because of any virtue on my part, just because what you portray is something maybe that's attractive. And when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I finally got to a group of Alcoholics Anonymous that actually showed that there was something different. There's a way of life different from what I was living. And I don't know what that day was, but I believe I crossed the line from taking to giving, because for a period of time I was a taker. In Alcoholics Anonymous, all I did is I came when I wanted to, came late, didn't matter to me, interrupted meetings, got up during meetings, made noise while other people were trying to share. Didn't matter to me. I was a taker. Thought it was my right. I looked new. People would come up to me and go, Dave, are you new? I was pissed. How the heck can they tell I'm new? You look new. You talk new. Your language is new. My language was laced with four-letter words and phrases that began with mother. That was my language. I talked new. And I thought it was my right to see if I could shock you. If I get somebody to crinkle their nose, I enjoyed it. You know? Ooh. I didn't realize I'm disturbing the very place where maybe some miracle of sobriety happens, when what happens when we care enough about our meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and try to employ some principles, that maybe the brand new person that comes in and saying, God, I hope there's something different there. And maybe you're new, and maybe you've been to AA before, and maybe you've not been to this group, or maybe you've not been to groups like this group where we take sobriety a little more seriously, where we actually try to produce an atmosphere in our AA meeting that might be attractive to a type of individual, not to everybody, but to a type of individual who comes here. Our book, on the first page of the doctor's opinion, says, Dr. Silkworth writes a most unbelievable phrase, and he's talking about the alcoholic that our book describes. He said, in late 1934, I attended a patient who was the alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless. And I believe our group in Tulsa, your group here, and some groups like Shawnee, that's what we cater to. We cater to the alcoholic of that type, the alcoholic who's tried everything else. Because ours is the hardest brand of sobriety. It's going to demand change. It's going to demand that you change. It's going to demand that you want sobriety more than you want the way you've lived. See, the one thing I failed to understand is that you had something I couldn't steal. I couldn't lie through. I couldn't scam. I couldn't knock your head and take it from you. I had to earn what you had. It was a brand of sobriety I'd never seen. But it was something I was going to have to work for. And what I found out is after you had showed it to me through your actions and how you carried yourself and how you conducted yourself, what I found out was it was something that I wanted. It was the answer I'd been looking for, and like I said, I didn't even know what the question was. And the greatest day of my life was when I found out that I'm an alcoholic. And that as an alcoholic, our book, if I'm an alcoholic of that type, that hopeless type, see, and if I'm an alcoholic, I can't tell a brand new person you're that type of alcoholic. There's only one way you're ever going to get that understanding, and you're going to have to drink yourself to that understanding. You're going to have to drink yourself to understand if you're an alcoholic of that type. Most people that come through AA, we also use other substances. What I found out is I'm using other substances to try to help control my drinking. I found out I could drink a lot more on certain substances. I'll tell you one thing. I never drank to make my other substances better. But I always took substances to take my alcohol to a new level. I found certain substances where I'll tell you, I'll tell you. I'm going to tell you. The greatest day of my drinking career, because this is what I thought I was shooting for. I had this vision of a man's man. Somebody who could take a bottle of vodka and tip it up and drink it. And I had enough substances in me where one night I picked up a bottle of vodka and I tipped it up and I just started drinking it down. And I heard the ooh, and I had arrived. Now the next 3 days were bad. But that one moment of infamy, it was like I put it up on my mantle. Dave, the vodka chugger. I had arrived. I didn't know what I was shooting for. Now, people that are coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, do you want something different? If you want the way you're living, we're probably going to waste your time. If you enjoy the way you're living, we're probably not the group for you. If you enjoy what you get when you do what you do, then we're probably not the group for you. But if you're tired of living the way you're living, if you're looking for a different way, and our book asks a question, and it was read here tonight in how it works. It asks a question. It says, if you've decided you want what we have, and you're willing to go to any length to get it, Then and only then are you ready to take steps. You shouldn't even approach the steps unless, first of all, you've decided you want what we have. Now, if you don't know what we have, stick around. Come to some meetings. Come as often as you can. Come as often as you dare. And find out if you want what we have. We'll greet you every day until you can make that decision. But if the answer is no, then please leave. Obviously, you don't want what we have, so don't stay and interrupt our meetings. There's plenty of other places to go and interrupt. But groups like this, we have a mission. We have a mission to try to carry a message to an alcoholic who's still suffering. We're dedicated to try to carry the message to a suffering alcoholic who wants to be well. In fact, now that may sound cruel. That may sound like, boy, Dave, they just crossed a line. But one of the things my sponsor taught me early on is let's go in the book and dig it out. Let's see if something like that's in the book. And our book actually says it doesn't matter how far you've sunk. Everybody will be welcome cordially. But then there's a caveat, an if. If he means business. You're cordially welcomed if you mean business. Well, we're not going to kick you out. We may talk bad about you. But if you don't mean business, you're wasting our time. And I promise you, we'll be wasting yours. Go drink. Get yourself to that point of hopelessness. And if it don't die, come back. We got an answer here for you. So I go through these steps, and my life changes. And I'll never forget the first Christmas sober. I go home and I sit with my parents, and I don't steal from them. There wasn't much I could do right, but I could stop doing the wrong stuff. That was as good as it got in the early days for me. I wasn't much good at doing stuff right, but I stopped doing bad stuff. I stopped vomiting on their carpet. They were appreciative of that. All right? I stopped stealing their stuff. I actually said hi to them. They appreciated that. And little by little, that process it started working. On my 15-year AA birthday, my wife got real sneaky and she flew my parents in. I'd worked steps. I'd made amends. I'd gone through all that stuff. I had a sponsor who taught me right from wrong. I had a sponsor who taught me right action to do. I'd call my parents, ask them how they're doing. Never again was I to ask for money. That was a tough one. Have a nice day. Stop asking for money. Ask them how they're doing. I actually started showing up. I flew home one day on my own money so I could go sit with my mom on Mother's Day. She was absolutely shocked. I'd go home and I'd pay her for a round of golf for my father. He was shocked. Just do little stuff around the house. So on my 15-year AA birthday, my wife flew in my parents. It was my sponsors, before I got the current sponsor, a guy by the name of Jim Shaw, who taught me everything I know about being a good member of AA. That was one of his last talks. And on Sunday, I got to drive my parents back to the airport. And my father pulled me aside. This is 15 years later. My father pulled me aside. He said, Dave, at a time I thought maybe you had a promising golf career. But he said, after this weekend, it's obviously that you've been called to a higher order. And the cycle had gone complete. I had made amends to my father, and now when we talk, every conversation that he and I have ends with, Dad, I love you. And he says back, Dave, I love you. And that comes from the man who looked me in the eye and hated me so badly for the actions that I had taken. And they want me to come. They're excited about that we're going to be together in 3 weeks. And I didn't think anything like that was possible for somebody like me. I thought I had destroyed that. I don't have any right to have any of that stuff back. I destroyed it. And for whatever reason, through the power of this program and these steps and a loving God, I've got that back. But I had to want it, and I had to work for it. And I had to have instruction because I couldn't have come up with the ideas by myself. One of the hardest things I've ever had to sit and watch is watching my mom suffer from this disease. And I knew she had drinking problems. And one night, the only time my wife and I ever fought is when we'd have to go visit my parents between day 1 and year 15, because my mom was drunk all the time. And it was just tearing me up. And I'd come home from those visits, and I'd call my sponsor and say, Jim, I can't stand it. My mom's dying. And he said, yeah, I know. He goes, and he'd tell me the story about his dad. His dad was a bad alcoholic, and his dad got sober when he was 78. And he died with just shy of 10 years. And he said, so partner, I don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what God's got in store, but we're going to keep praying. We're going to keep doing the right thing. And through a series of circumstances, one night, my father lost his job, and he was at home, and he got up one night, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and my mom went in bed, and he walked through the house, and he found her in the kitchen, and she was chugging a bottle of vodka. Like, get it honestly. I didn't even know. Just family trait, man. We're a bunch of vodka chuggers. And the next day he called me. He said, what do we do? And we talked, and so he called me, and on January 8th of 1993, they put my mom in a treatment center. And on January the 8th, 1994, I got to stand up in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in Sarasota, Florida, and I got to hand my mom her 1-year sober medallion. And on January 8th of 1998, I got to stand up in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in Sarasota, Florida, and I got to hand my mom her 5-year sober medallion. And my plan is next January 8th, is to stand up in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in Sarasota, Florida, and hand my mom her 10-year sober medallion. In my area, a lot of people think I'm a little radical because I dare to stand up for the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. I dare to speak my mind, and I dare to say to people who are disturbing our meeting to shut up and to sit down and to show some respect for the things that go on in these rooms. And the one thing that my sponsor taught me was that we try to tell the suffering alcoholic the truth about their condition. We're not going to sugarcoat it. If you're an alcoholic, your chances are very bad. Your only hope is if you're an alcoholic of that type, that book describes, is to buy the entire package of AA and get in here and mean business. And our group does a very good job of weeding out the ones who want it and don't. Because what we do is, I'll tell you that you want to piss an alcoholic off, I'll give you the easiest way to do it. Tell them the truth. You want to piss an alcoholic off, tell them the truth. Tell them the truth about their condition. And then by every form of experimentation and self-deception, they're going to try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule. And we've done them a favor. Maybe they're not an alcoholic. Maybe they're just a bad, hard drinker. And we've freed them from the bondage of AA for the rest of their life. But if they're an alcoholic, we've done them a favor. Because they'll never be able to successfully drink ever again. You know, my wife and I are going to be celebrating 17 years. We'll celebrate 17 years of marriage. And she's an active member of Al-Anon, and she sponsors Karen, and she sponsors a lot of other gals, and her phone's always ringing. And I'm an active member of my home group, and I sponsor a bunch of guys. And our life is full of AA and Al-Anon, and I can't imagine not doing what we do. I can't imagine not living the life that I've been so privileged because of your program and your steps and the principles that are contained within our book, Alcoholics Anonymous. But mostly I'm so fortunate to have been at a place when I got to AA, there was a person there that understood AA, and he understood the disease, and he was able to communicate that to me. And therefore, if you're new here, or if you're visiting, or if you're trying to figure out, do you or don't you want it? The one thing that I'll ask you is if you don't want it, that's fine. But maybe your mother might need it, or your father might need it, or your son might need it, or your daughter may need it, or your aunt, or your uncle, your niece, your nephew, grandfather, grandmother, grandson. They may need Alcoholics Anonymous. If you don't want it, get out of the way. Because there's serious life and death business going on in these rooms. And when somebody comes in and wants it bad enough, and they lay hold of these principles, and they go about it with the, as our book describes, half the zeal they went about trying to get the next drink, miraculous things happen, and we're sitting in front of one. We're getting to watch the miracle of AA happen in the life of Mike. And because it's happened in Mike, it's happened in Karen. And because it's happened in their lives, it's happened in the lives of the family. And I know that they're pleased and proud and just absolutely overjoyed with the fact that their son and their brother has sobriety. And that those little girls don't have to wake up to a drunken father. and a nutty mother. And it happens because people dedicate themselves to this simple program called Alcoholics Anonymous in Al-Anon. Every morning when I wake up, I thank God for the program of AA. It's because of Alcoholics Anonymous that today I have a relationship with my God. And for that, I'll always be grateful. Thank you.
My name is Mike Erickson. I'm alcoholic. July 19th, 87 is my sobriety date. And, man, I'm glad to be here tonight. I want to thank my folks for coming and my sisters for being here. I want to thank Spons for the last 6 years. And I want to thank all you guys who came and showed up from Tulsa and Shawnee. I appreciate that. There are guys in this room that I love more than anybody. I mean, there are guys in here that I just love, and I never thought I'd have friendship like that. There are guys that would come running if I was hurting. And likewise, you know. I want to thank this home group and all the guys that sit here and are part of this group, and despite our seeming moments of chaos and controversy at times, we stand still and we stay the course. And you know, I was thinking about I woke up Friday morning, this morning, and I got to thinking, what do you do? What do you do now that you're 15 years sober? And all I could think was, you get dressed and you go be of service. You get dressed and you go. That's all I know how to do. And we went and saw that. We went to that funeral today. And, that open casket and that 2-year-old girl sitting in that casket, it just tore my heart out. And like Dave and Scott and everybody mentioned, if I could take away that pain, I would. And my life is good. My life is good. I got good stuff in my life. I got a family that cares. I got guys that would stand up for me. I got a God in my life that I can't explain how it happens to a guy like me. He's so big, I can't put any bounds around him. And I got you people in my life. And the only thing I can think to repay that is just give it back. That's it. And I can't. I can't give back everything that's been so freely given to me. I just got to stay for a while. And so for you guys that are in here that are new tonight, one thing I can offer you, one piece of hope is, I don't care what your head tells you, just stay here. Because that's the only way I know how to get 15 years, is you just have to stay here. And you don't drink, and you keep doing this stuff. And you just stay here. Your head's going to tell you, you don't have to do it. Or it's not that important. Or I got better things to do. Get in here. Get in the middle. Stay with us. Do what we do. Resign from the debating society. Those are things that have not come easy, but they've come. And the reason they've come is I've stayed. And that's all I can tell you. That's all I can tell you. I'm grateful for my sobriety today. This has been a long year. It's lasted 18 months. For those of you who didn't know, I had to change my sobriety date this year because of a little near-beer experiment I had in the very beginning. But I wanted to live with a clear conscience more than I wanted the time. I wanted to live with a clear conscience. And I'm so glad for examples that said that's, I'll tell you, Jerry talked about it today. The reason I have a sponsor and the reason I have you guys is you set a bar that's so high it's unattainable for me. But I just keep trying to jump over the son of a gun, you know? I just keep trying. And if I'll stay long enough, you're going to raise it again. And I'll get over the next one. And you'll raise it again, and I'll get over the next one. Thanks so much for all you've done for a drunk like me. I'm going to stay. I like what I'm getting. Thanks.
If you are a member of the Into Action AA group,